first item up is one that originally we were planning to do yesterday. I apologize if that caused some confusion for you, but we're going to start with action item 2.8, appointment of the member of the board of the foundation, and Melissa Connor. Hit your button. There you go.
Chancellor, members of the board. I'm here today on behalf of the foundation to request the appointment of a new board member, filling the role of public member to our board of directors for the Foundation for California Community Colleges. Just as background, from the foundation bylaws, when the foundation board recommends a new member, it needs to be ratified by the Board of Governors, so that's why we're bringing it forward today. And the foundation board is recommending the appointment of Dr. Yasmin Davids by the Board of Governors to the foundation board. Dr. Davids was vetted through our nomination process, which was led by our board governance committee. And with her nomination, it'll bring our board to a maximum total of 11 members. We feel that Dr. Davids is going to be a fantastic new addition to our board. She brings tremendous enthusiasm, a world of connections, and some great skills that will be a wonderful addition to our board. Her full biography was included in the board agenda, but just to give you a quick overview, Dr. Davids is an organizational psychologist. She's founder and CEO of the Latino Global Executive Leadership Institute, founder and president of the Women's Institute of Negotiation. Her career is focused on entrepreneurship, negotiation skills, leadership cultivation, with a particular focus on empowering and developing members of disadvantaged communities, including women. Our full board supports the nomination and really looks forward to working with her. And with that, I recommend that the Board of Governors appoint Dr. Davids to the foundation board.
Any comments from the board? Take a motion. Rawlings and Avalos. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Congratulations, you have a new board member.
Melissa can stay right there.
We're going to jump up to 4.8, the Foundation Impact Report.
So I do have a PowerPoint presentation to accompany this. So this is our annual update to the Board of Governors. I will mention that usually our CEO and President, Keitha Mills, would be here delivering this, but Keitha is working from home, recovering from foot surgery this week. So we're wishing her a speedy recovery, and she will be back with us soon. But this item is going to look at really two main topics. Let's see if I can. We're going to look at our year in review, our fiscal year 2018 in review, and then we're also celebrating 20 years of service to the California Community College system this year. So we're going to share some of the ways that we're marking that milestone. You should have in front of you our annual report. It's our Innovation and Impact Report. And so this PowerPoint will be, or this presentation will be sharing some of the highlights, but there's much more detail behind the work and the results of that work in the report itself. Fiscal year 2018 was a tremendous year for us in terms of growth and impact across a number of key metrics. Really what we focused on this year was the vision for success, working hand in hand with the Chancellor and the Chancellor's office to bring in additional resources to support that work. If you'll remember, the foundation originally brought in philanthropic dollars to make the planning work possible for the vision, and we've stayed committed to its success. Working with the Chancellor, we raised almost $6 million in direct resources to help implement the vision this year. Our program and services span across 5 areas of impact: student success, workforce development, equity, community impact, system support. really the way we look at all of this work is more of a Venn diagram than siloed areas of work, but this is how we communicate our work to our funders and our partners. Some high-level numbers here. Again, there's a lot of information about this work in the report itself, but we secured over $11 million to support student success initiatives, over $11 million for workforce development, $4 million for our equity portfolio, $7 million for community impact work, and over $8 million to provide tools and resources for system support and services this year. So some of the numbers we're celebrating this year, over $41 million in support of programs and services benefiting the system. 85% of that went to direct program and service delivery, which is an important number for nonprofits and a good number that we're proud of. There were over 199 unique resource generating grants and contracts from philanthropic, corporate, state, and federal sources. So a very diverse set of funding sources. The revenue number that I shared represents a 40% growth over the last 2 years. We distributed $3.5 million this year in student scholarships through the Osher Scholarship Endowment Program that we steward. This is an endowment that will provide scholarships in perpetuity, and this year $3.5 million went out directly to students. Through our College Buys program, which is our cooperative purchasing program, there was over almost $34 million in savings to students, faculty, staff, and colleges. A lot of our work in workforce development is around work-based learning, and we were very proud to connect 105,000 students with work-based learning experiences this year. This is through programs like our LaunchPath matching program, our CCPS, which is a clinical placement program for nursing students so they can get placements in hospitals, and our Career Catalyst program, which is a paid internship program. And as I mentioned, paid internships is something that we prioritize in our work. So $3.7 million in wages earned by students this year through these work-based learning opportunities. So those are the numbers we're proud of that we're celebrating. What we saw is a tremendous year, but I do encourage you to look through the report itself to see some of the real results and the work that went into those numbers. And then my second item here is that we're very excited to be celebrating 20 years of service. November actually marks the month. And as part of that, we're taking an opportunity to both look back and look forward. And we've set an ambitious goal of doubling our impact over the next decade of service. And this means a lot of different things, but we want to double the resources that we're bringing in annually. We want to increase our, across all of our different program areas, we have different metrics of how we're going to be kind of looking at doubling our impact over the next decade. And all of our work now is aligned around the vision for success. And we're very proud of the role that we're playing in forging new partnerships and accelerating bold approaches to advance the mission of the colleges. We've launched a 20th anniversary campaign, and the goals around that campaign is to formally introduce this double impact goal. We also want to increase understanding of the foundation's work and our role in the system. We did do some research, and we found out that while the foundation is very respected in the system, we're still, how we work is still not fully known to some folks, so we're trying to provide clarity around that. There's also some confusion around our name. And so we're calling our campaign the Foundation For campaign, and we're kind of reintroducing our name and who we are and what we do. And then our goal is to build and expand partnerships to support the work of the system. So I'll give you kind of a highlight of the campaign that we're now implementing. So you can see we're the Foundation For, and these are the areas that we're supporting: student success, workforce development, equity, community impacts, system support. These are some of the things that we found that we're known for, and they're part of our nonprofit culture of how we work. So collaboration, acceleration, commitment to excellence, innovation, sustainability. And these are the things that we aspire, and these are just some words. We have other words that we're using for different programs, but these are things that we're aspiring with relentless optimism to try to facilitate positive change. As part of this campaign, we've also launched a giving campaign to celebrate the 20th anniversary. This year we're focusing on learning technology for foster youth. This is a campaign that kind of marries two of our programs. So we have a foster youth program in the foundation that works closely with the chancellor's office. And we also have our college-advised cooperative purchasing program that allows us to get state-of-the-art technology equipment for discounted cost. And so we're doing a fundraising campaign that looks at how do we provide foster youth in California with the learning technology they need to be successful in school. Fundraise will provide what we're calling learning technology kits. And so these are combinations, depending on what the student will need, of laptops, software, and an opportunity to get the California Connects mobile internet service. The campuses that are participating are right now part of our Youth Empowerment Strategies for Success program, a foster youth program, and the campus coordinators will be nominating students to be eligible to receive these kits, which will be distributed in January. And we're really trying to foster a culture of giving within our organization, and we have set in a very ambitious goal to have 100% board and staff participation in the campaign. And our message is that any size gift matters. So, you know, if you're a student assistant, $2 is a nice gift. We'll take 20, 200, 2,000 and beyond, and really any amount is helpful for a student. And so I encourage the board, if you would like to give, we would appreciate it. And also if you could help share the campaign with your networks. We're trying to wrap it up by the end of the year so that we can distribute the kits in January. I will mention that we've been a bit quiet on the campaign the last week or so due to the wildfires. We're really focusing on the emergency fundraising effort, and so that you can also donate to that through our site or encourage people to go there. You can either give to a statewide fund, or we also have links to the local colleges, so you can give directly to the colleges. And we're trying to work with the colleges to make sure they have a page set up where they can accept funds directly. But we will start sending out messages about this in the next few weeks, and again, hope to wrap up by the end of the year. So thank you. That's my presentation.
If I can add just a few things to the report, I just want to personally, on behalf of the entire Chancellor's Office staff, thank the Foundation for its partnership. They have really stepped up and worked with us. Certainly thank you to the Board of Governor members, Jennifer Perry, Arnaldo Avalos, who represent us, represent the board on the Foundation. They've been very close partners. As you can see, they've aligned everything that they're doing around the vision for success. They've helped support the online college and are very proactive at helping us find more funding going forward. So they've been great partners, and as was just mentioned, they've stepped up every time there's been a disaster at one of our campuses and have jumped in early to help support the fundraising for relief efforts, and of course, most recently at Butte College. They are actively supporting fundraising for Butte College as we speak. So thank you to you and your team, Melissa.
Thank you, Chancellor. One thing I forgot to mention is we provided a pledge card in your packet. So your innovation and impact report's in the back of the brochure, as well as a pledge card. And it has the link to donate on our website. And you can also find the emergency fundraising page for wildfires there as well. And if you prefer, there is a way to pledge. Use the pledge card. Thank you. And I'm happy to accept them. Thank you.
Well, one board member donates.
You're such a show-off. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, if I may, I do want to applaud and appreciate the work of the foundation as well. And I think as we look forward in your campaign that you just mentioned, and I know that local districts, the 72 districts, are also embarking on their individual campaigns. Even at the college level, let's say at our Los Rios, we have 4 campuses, and there's coordination between the 4 colleges with the district and coordination amongst the 4 colleges so that we don't tap into the same resource, if you will. Has there been thought or consideration given to that aspect at the state level, at your foundation level with the 72 districts, so that Bill Rawlings here, he can't give to his college or his district and to the foundation, but there may be folks who said that I'm going to give here and not give there, and wonder if there is some consideration to that. Curious.
Yes, that's a great question. It's something that we're very conscious of. What we do is very different from the traditional college foundations. We're an operating foundation. These more traditional fundraising campaigns are not something that we do regularly. This is more of we do one campaign a year, and it's really targeted on something specific. We actually heavily support the network of California and Community College Foundations. We're a member of that board and a fiscal sponsor for them. And that's all the executive directors from the local colleges, local college foundations. And we support their work, try to bring up fundraising in the system as a whole. So I feel our work is we're working with large scale, if we are doing programs, they're across multiple colleges, and it's very different. So we're here to really bolster the work at the local level and to provide all the support we can for those college foundations to make fundraising as effective as possible throughout the system.
Pavlos.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa, for the presentation. Can you just highlight, like, for example, one funder and one initiative that we're working on as part of the foundation? I think that's one of the things that we'd like to just touch base.
Yeah, I think the vision would be a great example because we brought together, Irvine Foundation, Gates Foundation, College Futures Foundation to really support the planning work of that. And now they're very interested in supporting the implementation work around it. And these funders are very interested in systems change. They also fund at the local level. If they're looking at something that's regional or they're wanting to do a small-scale pilot, when they're working with the chancellor's office and the foundation, they're looking at broad-scale change. And so, and they're committed to continuing to invest in that work. So the vision's been really exciting because, funders were able to support some flexible work right at the beginning, and now they're very excited about the commitment of the system to really seeing this work through. And then they're looking at ways where they can come in and provide that kind of margin of excellence to try to innovate or try something that we can then take to scale. Is that a helpful example?
Any other? Yeah. Mr. Rawlings.
I would just say, having been in the system for a number of years, that I remember when the foundation was struggling a little bit, particularly before Keith had joined us, and seeing the growth and the strength now within the foundation and the scale of impact that the foundation is having is incredibly impressive. And seeing the learning technology for foster youth, that's something that's close to me just because I work a lot with foster youth, especially those that are lacking technology. They come and they use the space that we provide, but that isn't always the best for them. And having them with technology that they can take home or take to wherever they are, to be able to really use that time and space to succeed is great. So I'm really looking forward to this campaign being successful.
Great, thank you.
So thank you so much for your work and for your leadership. I serve on the Los Rios Foundation, and this foundation stands as we'll use the term North Star in the alignment of your fundraising to the alignment of the strategic plan, but really knowing who our students are and working really hard to know what those needs are, and then translating that for the funders, because that becomes really key, and then translate, and I know that you have wonderful board members, but also translating it for the board members so that everybody is sort of rowing the boat in the same direction, which leads to a much more successful campaign and then the outreach that's necessary. So before I got here, I wasn't quite sure what this foundation does. And I think it's really key for the 72 districts, who many of them do have foundations, but may not be as aligned as they should be based on student need, that's where your voice would be absolutely invaluable. So again, thank you so much for that work.
It's a great point. We, at the last CASE conference, which is a national conference for fundraising professionals, the foundation gave a presentation on how to align your fundraising with the strategic vision. And the room was actually packed. It was really, really interesting. So I think there is a need around that, and I hope we can do an even better job of helping to bring everyone along.
Let me add to that point, Vice President Haynes. Not only is the foundation informing the field on how to align, but they're also informing funders. So funders are coming to the foundation, the large funders, and asking, how can we help align our giving to the field to help with the vision for success. So that doubles the impact of the foundations that we're working with.
Any other comments? Okay, I have a few questions myself, and the first is a really important one. I see that your title is Chief Advancement Officer, and I'd like to know exactly what that encompasses.
Sure, a lot. So advancement within our organization oversees the traditional resource development activities. So and for us, that's mostly grant writing, as well as stakeholder engagement. We also have our communications and technology team embedded within advancement, which is a move that we made probably 5 years ago. And it's been tremendously helpful for us because we have our communication, and really everything we do as a foundation is resource development. So having our comms team working hand in hand with our more traditional resource development folks has been really helpful. And for those of you who know our work well, we have a pretty robust communications and technology team as well that not only are they supporting the work of the foundation, they also do work, like project work, where they're developing tools, whether it's software tools or communication campaigns within the foundation itself. So we almost have our own mini communications firm embedded within our advancement team.
Okay, great, thanks. You alluded to name confusion among the colleges. Could you explain that a little bit?
Sure. I think we've probably all stumbled over our name. There's a historical reason why our name is the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We actually did some brand research to consider changing our name because we're not a traditional college foundation. And just intuitively, the foundation would come after California Community Colleges. And so there was a real confusion in the field about other foundations that exist out there and how we play into that ecosystem and just remembering our name. And so, but there was also a lot of brand equity in our name, and to the point where it didn't make sense to change the name. It made more sense to kind of embrace it and clear up some of the confusion. So our campaign is targeted around that. And so the Foundation for campaign really emphasizes kind of the work that we're doing, how we work, and it also reminds you that foundation comes first in our name.
Another question was, you talked about the $3.7 million that went to students for internships or apprenticeships. Is that money that was paid by the foundation, or is that paid by employers as a result of arrangements that you put together?
It's both. It's primarily through our Career Catalyst program, which is the paid internship program. In most of those, the way most of those arrangements work is the foundation becomes the employer of record for the student. So it allows employers more flexibility in order to be able to offer student internships. It also, again, provides that kind of margin of excellence where we can ensure a great experience, that it's a great match for the student. But the employers would pay, in most of the, sometimes there are grant funds that pay the wages, but primarily the employers pay the wages. The foundation manages the internship and the intern.
Okay, and then you talked about one of the goals is double impact. You used that term. Could you explain that?
Yeah, it's an emerging concept, so I will say that. But the goal is, at the heart of it, is how do we double the amount of resources that we're bringing in annually to support the California Community College system? It's in the back of our heads. That's sort of, one of the things that are driving this. But there are a number of other metrics that we really want to look at and develop with our different programs over the next decade of service.
So you mean you want to double the resources of the foundation? Is that
Double the resources,
in
yes,
what
that we're
period of-
providing to the
in what
system
period of time?
over the next decade, so by 2028.
And you have a plan to execute on that? Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
okay.
working towards this.
And when you do raise funds, I know that you receive other foundation funds, but when you raise funds for a specific project like the foster children project, who do you go to for that? Are you going just to individuals? Are you going to foundations for that as well? How does that work?
So we have a diverse array of funding sources. I mean, we're working with traditional philanthropy. We work with corporate philanthropy. We have state grants. We've had federal grants that support the work. I think our strongest projects have grown over time, and they've really had braided resources. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is being able to take seed funding and then take that to scale. So a great example would be our nursing programs, which were seed funded by the Moore Foundation many years ago, and now it has it's a nonprofit fee-for-service revenue model that allows that program to sustain. And I think the Moore Foundation actually told us that we're one of the few projects that actually went to sustainability and scale that they've funded. So that's something that we pride ourselves on.
So, but with respect to that foster children program, though, I mean, since I've been here, I can't recall the foundation actually asking us to give a contribution for a specific program. And so in addition to asking us here in the community, I mean, where are you, do you have an individual base, or are you going to corporations? Is that what
Yeah, so the campaign that we're launching is an individual giving campaign, but we are also looking at corporate sponsorships and partnerships. Our goal is to have one individual giving campaign per year, typically towards the end of the year, that we will allow. Really, it's to build that kind of culture of giving within our system. And so it's a way for our staff to get engaged. It's a way for our board to get engaged. And again, we don't typically do this type of funding because it's smaller dollars. I mean, we're working with large foundations that are giving multi-million-dollar grants to really support large-scale work. So this is definitely kind of at the margin, but it's a way to come in and supplement a program that we have that's running with technology for some of the superstar students that can really benefit from this. So it's something, I think it's a rallying point, and it's an opportunity that we haven't had in the system before.
So are you going to the whole system, or just in the chancellor's
Our
office?
focus is the foundation, the chancellor's office, the board, and then we are spreading the word with external stakeholders and the system, but our goal is really on internal giving. And then some of our, as I mentioned, we are going to be reaching out to corporate sponsors that have partnered with us in other ways.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure your time here today was worthwhile, that you didn't feel like you got off the hook too easy. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else have anything? It's very exciting what you're...
Melissa, just a quick question. So what percent of the 41 million came from individual donations? I think that's kind of what President...
It would be a very small percent.
Less than 1%, 2%, 3%?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's very small.
Yeah.
But again, this is something we're taking baby steps on. I think that this is something that we can continue to grow. We've talked about, building alumni partnerships. I mean, this is something that has the potential. It's not something that we've traditionally done as the foundation. But I think so far we've had really good feedback, a lot of enthusiasm around doing this annually.
Oh, I'm sorry, just one last thing. You said that you try to do this annually at this time of year, because I can't recall any other. I mean, I know you've solicited funding for the disasters and stuff. Has there been?
This is our first time.
It's the first time. That's
First
okay.
time,
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving back to item 4.5, innovation and change at ACCJC. We like those words. Deputy Chancellor Gonzalez.
I think it's worth noting that the room isn't full with ACCJC coming up. Just wanted to highlight that for everybody.
Did we send an invitation to CCSF? Don't rile them up.
All right, so we're all going to wake up now that we're going to talk about accreditation. Good morning, President Epstein, Vice President Haynes, board members, Chancellor Oakley. This is an informational item for your consideration. We have the Accrediting Commission for Community and Junior Colleges. You have Dr. Walton, who's the ACCJC Chair, and Dr. Wynn, the ACCJC President. It's important to note that just over a year ago, September of 2017, the Board of Governors received an update on the CEO accrediting work groups 1 and 2. And so the commission has been busy at work. And I want to thank Dr. Wynn for reaching out to the Chancellor's office to provide all of you an update on the innovations and changes that they have been working on.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm going to ask our commission chair, who plays a significant role in the reinvention of ACCJC, to introduce himself and draw some links to this moment.
Good morning, President Epstein, board members, Chancellor. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Ian Walton. I'm a retired faculty member from Mission College in Santa Clara. I spent 33 years there teaching mathematics and had lots of good times. I've been a public member of the commission since 2013, and I succeeded Chancellor Rodriguez as chair just earlier this summer. So some of you actually know me from a long time ago. 2006, I used to sit here as president of the Academic Senate. And if you remember, that was the year when together we created the original Basic Skills Initiative. And that was in response to raising the graduation competencies in English and math. And that was an exciting time. Last time you saw me, though, was 2015. That wasn't so good. But at that time, Chancellor Rodriguez and I, we both testified briefly, and we asked you to create an opportunity for enhanced communication between you and the commission and our member colleges. And in lots of ways, you really did that. Thank you very much. With the work groups and other conversations and mechanisms. So President Wynn's going to describe to you some of the very specific changes that came out of that opportunity for enhanced communication.
My understanding is that this body, both its present and some of its former members, have expended a great deal of energy concerned about the Accrediting Association. The purpose of our conversation today is not to look back, but to look forward. I would say in 4 words: new people, new philosophy. It is a new organization, and I'd like to highlight some of the ways in which that is actually playing out. I know accreditation is an obscure topic for many people, and it really comes up on your horizon only when it's run awry. But let me briefly show you some of the ways in which we have rolled out an entirely different kind of an organization. 2 quick significant initiatives. One is what we call the portfolio model. In this way, we have a new team of 3 vice presidents. Each vice president is assigned as a liaison to a cluster of institutions in their portfolio. They get to know that institution's distinctive character, its history, its issues. They are directly available for training. They go to the campus. They conduct training in the context of the campus and its issues and missions. They provide ongoing support. We tell the accreditation officers, put your vice president on your speed dial. They are very accessible 24/7, and that's happening. One of the outcomes is a very consistent approach to interpretation of the standards, how they are applied, how the review process unfold. We understand that historically, people in the region would say, do you want a hard answer or a soft answer? And that would determine which vice president they would call at the office. Those days are gone. The vice president then accompanies the site team on its site visit as advocates for the process to make sure that every step is done with integrity, transparency, consistency. Following the visit, they guide the report through the commission, again, making sure that it's clear, that it references the appropriate standards, and that no monkey business happens to that report as it comes before the commission for its action. A second cluster of initiatives have to do with this guiding principle that we've adopted from the Baldridge area. Take the fear out of the system. When there's fear, mischief happens. People hide evidence. People don't wish to be candid about their areas of weakness. And that subverts some of the major purposes of conducting accreditation work. How is this done? We've done complete revisions of the training for the chairs and the teams to impart a different philosophy that's collaborative, that's supportive, that's transparent, that reduces the uncertainties. We have, for the first time, begun a regular conference that we'll be conducting every 2 years, where we rely on a flow of accurate information about accreditation and its expectations, because we're convinced that that is the way by which enduring change happens. There's been a sense in the past that the way in which change was accomplished was through the fear of a sanction. And I'll speak to that in just a moment, but that's not our driving methodology. We seek to establish collaborative, collegial relationships with our staff, with teams, with the commission, and the reports we're getting is that that really works. We've moved in the direction of a significant reduction of sanctions. If you have been around back in the 2012 era, you may recall a time when there were close to 25% of the institutions on some kind of a sanction. In 2018, that is 0. We are also working to lighten the burden. Accreditation can demand huge personal and financial resources of an institution. We have sought to find as many ways as we can to reduce that burden. We've simplified the sub-change process, which some people on the institutions have found really burdensome. Far fewer issues, reports that have gone from 40 pages to 5 pages. We've significantly reduced the annual report requirements down to what do we really need to know and what are we expected and required to provide in terms of federal oversight. In contrast to up to 5 years of 10% a year dues increase, last year there were no dues increases. This year a 2% COLA. There had been a 15% override, special assessment to handle legal costs for many years. That is now gone and will never be seen again. What we call the ICER, the Institution Self-Evaluation Report. I've got one on my desk that's 626 pages long. That's past history. We've got most of them down to about 125 pages, and we're working to make them even less than that. We're no longer accepting, much less requiring, hard copy print editions, which saves institutions huge amounts of time and resources. It's all submitted digitally online. We have smaller teams going to the campuses, and we're not done yet. I mean, historically, they've been teams of 14 people, and I'm saying that's unnecessary. We're down to 10. Our target is 5 or 6, but that's linked to some other initiatives that we're working on. If a vice president needs to come to your campus, or if you want the vice president to come and do training, that they come at the office expense. It's not an additional burden to the campus. So this is just a quick glimpse of some of the areas of change. Looking ahead, we're not done yet. We're working toward the development of what we call a formative summative model of comprehensive reviews. And let me unpack those words very quickly. The college's self-study is submitted a semester in advance of the site visit. The team meets off-site, we call the off-site review, and conducts what we call a formative evaluation. And that evaluation allows a number of what we call operational aspects, compliance aspects that can be documented simply by the self-study. Take them off the table. We don't need to do anything further. You don't need to send a person to the campus to conduct 10 minutes of interviews and then sit around for the next 4 days. the team would then also say, we need some additional information in the following areas. And you may need to continue to develop some of your processes in anticipation of a site visit a semester later. The team also then creates what's called lines of inquiry, which is a narrow focus. So you're not, digging under the rocks to see how many scorpions you can find. When the team comes to your campus, you'll know in advance just what the issues are that you need to address. So a smaller team then comes to the campus. They conduct a shorter visit because many smaller issues have been taken off the table, and they conduct the on-site review leading to a summative recommendation. Those of you in classrooms, you know about the formative-summative model. No surprises, no gotchas, time to address issues that the team has found a semester earlier needing some further development. We believe that this is going to continue to transform the nature of our relationship with our institutions. We have selected 3 institutions that will pilot this model. We'll train them in January of this year. The commission, as it meets for its January session, will look at this initiative in great detail and put its endorsement behind it. And then as the pilot rolls out, we will learn from it, and then our anticipation is the entire region will move in this direction. And from what we're hearing, it's going to be met with real positive responses. Ian, this one's yours.
So President Wynne has just described, President Wynne has just described a transformation to you. I want to say that transformation did not happen by accident. It took a lot of professional dedication from many individual commissioners to make it happen. So I want to give a personal acknowledgement here to 3 people. You will probably know them. Joseph Belansky was one of your fellow board members. Eric Skinner was vice chancellor for many years. Ginny May was a faculty commissioner, and you now interact with her with the academic senate. So there were a lot of individuals that made that happen. And we often get the question, okay, how do we know it's going to stick and not flip back to previous scenarios? The best answer is the engaged commission that produced this change intends to stay engaged. So some of the things that have happened this year from the commission's point of view are a new strategic plan that was developed in 2017, enhanced evaluation and accountability at all levels, enhanced communication in a variety of ways with other agencies and other groups that we're talking to much more than we did in the past. An example of that is we've just started a new fiscal advisory group to look out for warning signs in the fiscal area, and it is including CBOs from member colleges as well as the expertise on the commission itself. So overall, I think what we've done from the point of view of the elected commissioners is we now have a much more transparent process overall, we have a much more effective process, and we have a much more responsive process in everything that we're doing. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you in the years to come.
I want to do a 60-second parentheses for those of you who may be new to the accreditation world and puzzle over the fact that California is the only place that has a accrediting association just for community colleges. The United States is divided into regions, and accreditation began in the East Coast in the 1880s and then moved down to Middle States in 1887, the Southern Association in 1895, Middle States, all those blue things, in 1895, the Northwest in 1917, and then there was a long pause. And the Western region didn't come into existence until 1962. What had happened during that time is that the concept of a community college had come into full play. If you go back to the 1880s, there was no such thing. There were some normal schools for teachers, there were a few extensions from high schools, but the concept of community college came into its own post-Second World War. The Truman Commission, the GI Bill, and then finally catalyzed really strongly here in the West by the California Master Plan. And at that point in the 60s, it was decided that the community colleges were not only a significant sector with a unique and distinctive mission, but a large enough and unique enough sector that it needed an accrediting association all of its own. That's why ACCJC is the only regional accreditor in the nation that speaks on behalf of and responds specifically to the needs of the community colleges. Also, just as a reminder, we also deal with 5 institutions way out in the Western Pacific, and we're very proud to have them in our membership. They face very unique challenges. We advocate on their behalf in the presence of people who want to shut them down because they have low graduation rates. So that's part of our tussle, and we're so proud to be working with them. Ian and I will be visiting 3 of them in January. At this point, we'd be glad to respond to any questions that you may have.
Okay, Member Costa.
It will come as no surprise that I'm interested in your fiscal advisory group. And I do want to just call out Mike Fine, who's here with FCMAT. And my hope is that you guys are also working with FCMAT and looking at the warning signs for fiscal distress in a district, because clearly accreditation and fiscal issues are intimately tied together, as we've seen. You know, they're in the field and they are subject matter experts. So I just want to make sure that as part of your group exploring this, you're reaching out to FCMAT.
I'm sorry, but could you explain what FCMAT is?
Sorry. FCMAT, which is through the Kern County Office of Education, is the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, and they are the body that goes in to deal with both K-12 and community college districts that are experiencing fiscal distress. So when we had Compton, FCMAT is who comes in, and they really are the people who look at all of the numbers to figure out kind of what's happening in the budget. But they're also well-versed in creating capacity for districts who are trying to get out of that, as far as kind of what internal controls they should be building. And so as much as they can identify problems, they also help build capacity in districts to get out of fiscal distress.
2 things in that regard. Our fiscal advisory group has retained the advisory services of Jim Austin, whom is widely recognized as a CBO, has worked with this office previously. And we have also set up some fairly regular phone calls with the fiscal leadership here at the Chancellor's office to make sure that we're reading the same signals, that we're collaborating any responses that we may have, each from our own point of leverage for any institution that we recognize is in fiscal distress. And we will continue to, at the level of the Vice President who's assigned to that institution, work very closely with this office and taking the responses that are suitable for an accrediting body. But thank you for that. That's a good question.
I think there's an ongoing conversation about how that collaboration to use the resources from FCMAT happens, whether the college asks for them voluntarily or whether the Chancellor's office encourages or imposes FCMAT, and how accreditation plays into that. Our role really is to identify a problem, not mandate the solution. So that's an interesting conversation of how we all cooperate.
Member Avalos?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. So one of the things that caught my eye is the number of colleges on sanctions. So if you look at 2013, the high of 27 colleges were some sort of sanctions. On average, probably 15, and now in 2017, we're at 0. So my question is that a healthy number? Is 0 a healthy number? I don't know.
There's a lot of discussion about how that particular era transpired. part of it was, in retrospect, perhaps a too rigid application of what was known as the 2-year rule. This is a federal rule that says that if you find an institution out of compliance with the standard, it has 2 years to solve it, or else we must take an adverse action. And so this was a way of saying, a sanction is a way of getting the institution's attention so that they will work on the issue quickly before an adverse action is necessary. It's also an expression of the issue that our standards are not yet sufficiently prioritized, where you have core issues that really threaten the effectiveness or the stability of the institution, and then you have smaller operational issues. The set of standards that we've inherited line them all up equally. We're working to modify that. That gives us greater flexibility to determine when an institution really deserves a sanction, or when we can simply say, we have an area of concern, give us a report in 2 years to show that you've addressed it, which is not a sanction. And that's why one of the main reasons why the sanctions have reduced. We do have a very clear set of obligations before the federal government that even if we have some variability in how we approach accreditation, we must insist on 2 things: student achievement and fiscal stability. So we continue to monitor very carefully those areas. We have had extensive devotion to those topics at our retreat sessions, where we've talked extensively about what's the most appropriate way to express those 2 areas of responsibility. I don't think that the decline in the sanctions represents giving away free passes. It does not represent a relaxing of the standards. It represents, in most part, a real readiness on the part of the member colleges to take our standards very seriously and to work hard to ensure that they are understood and incorporated into their practice.
I would add, Richard gets to do operations and I get to do philosophy. A large part of the answer to is zero appropriate is the way member institutions are responding, and you wrestle with this as well. If there's something that you think is important, how do you get people to pay attention? And sometimes that requires a sanction, and when things are working well, it's probably less likely to require a sanction. So I think that's part of what you're seeing at the moment in the change. People are paying much more attention.
Member Shaw.
You know, I joined the board in 2015, and so I got a sense of what the chancellor was talking about, the consternation and the controversy around this whole subject area. And so I just wanted to say, I just wanted to compliment you on how much progress you've made. I think the whole notion of taking the fear out of the process, you know, is key to as you move forward. And just as an aside, is it Dr. Wynn? I think, you know, I spent my entire career listening to people speak, and your tone and your articulation and your believability, which I think, you know, indicates your level of leadership. I've never heard anybody quite speak as well as you've spoken.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say that.
I will say that the real impact, I believe, has been as our 3 vice presidents have gone out and interfaced directly with these institutions. They have been so appreciated. I mean, they operationalize what we sit in our office and philosophize about, but they put it into practice, and I think that's been a major factor in just recalibrating how the region is responding to the agency.
Well, that's what a good leader does, compliment the other people.
A good team.
Grande.
Thank you very much for being here to answer questions and provide us with information today. You had just made a comment about a set of standards that you inherited. I assume that means that there is a comprehensive review of the standards that's going to be undertaken, if not already in progress. And if there is, what are some of the areas that we might see revisions in?
So the policy out of the federal government is that we're expected to review our standards once every 10 years. So that will begin in 2020. and conclude in 2022. Part of what's happening is with this formative summative model, when teams come together to look at the self-study and they begin over time to identify areas that we would consider operational, things that can be established just by reading documents, that we'll begin to see a priority developing within the standards. Many of the other accrediting agencies work with what they call core standards and then illustrative or operationalizing elements underneath it, which don't trigger a compliance, non-compliance kind of decision. So our goal, and in many respects, the Commission is already moving that direction in their decisions, but it's moving the unit of measure up to a higher level, up to a more pervasive or value-rich area of decision of the institution's operation. Actually redoing the standards is a very complex process, and we wish we could do it sooner, but we feel that given our carrying capacity, that this is an approach that would probably work the best.
Member Fawn.
I think along the line with Board Member Shaw, I do want to also compliment the wonderful work that you do. And I pay very particular attention to the vocabularies you use, like collegiality, collaborative, supportive, and lighten the burden and the like. And I think I recall the conversation about this very topic probably last year at the meeting in Santa Ana College, where the two work groups made their presentations and their findings and suggestions, and afterwards I had follow-up conversations with each of the chairs and also with you, Dr. Nguyen. And I think your coming on was a great sigh of relief for many of us in the field. But I do want to actually stress the importance. I think my colleague to the right here had mentioned this in his question, is that the importance of balancing all of these transformative initiatives that you have just outlined to the reality and to ensuring that yours is an accredited agency and an agency that has standards that must be met. And they could be in the realm of student achievement, of fiscal responsibility, of academic freedom, of participatory governance, and all the like at a college campus. And that those visited institutions, I think, need to be held account to those aspects of the governance and operation of a college. So, like I said, I'm thrilled to see all these transformations that you're undergoing, but also be mindful of the standards and accreditation role that the agency plays. Thank you.
Member Rawlings.
Thank you. So you mentioned about the visiting teams and having like a little smaller footprint as the visits happen. Having been in the system a while, I know how much work it is for those visiting teams. Having that formative meeting, I think, will be important, and narrowing down the scope of what they need to do during their visit is going to be important. But I wonder, there's a lot of writing and there's a lot of reading and prep work. And are you going to be able to really take the teams down? I know 14 is too much, but are you really going to be able to reach down to where you get 5 or 6 people on the visiting team and have them be able to dedicate the kind of time to the reading and the writing that's going to happen? It's going to be required, especially if you're looking at giving a fairly comprehensive report back to the institutions on where they can improve, whether it's through a recommendation or warning before sanctions or anything like that. I just wonder, that's a lot of work for fewer people to do.
So our anticipation is that the team will begin its work prior to the offsite review and largely have a team report ready at the time of the offsite review, knowing that they will need to refine it and modify it based on the-ground findings at the time of the on-site review. And we are also anticipating that a larger group may come together for the offsite review, and then once certain issues are off the table, you can send a smaller group that is built around just the remaining what we call lines of inquiry. So and we're expecting a smaller team report as well. You don't need to have to say something about 128 standards like the current reports do, that it can be more focused and therefore more substantive and valuable.
The Chancellor
In
has.
some ways, the work's all still there. It's just more of it is happening in advance and remotely rather than waiting till the very last minute when a large group of people suddenly descends on your college.
Okay, Vice President Haynes.
So I want to thank you for coming to to this particular forum, and I also want to thank you for coming to the League's Board of Trustees meeting. It was very helpful for the trustees, that leadership group, to hear the different changes, and I think we all welcomed those changes. I do have a question. One of the questions I have is, how many of our institutions have gone through this new process?
Well, right now, none.
None, okay.
It's being piloted, but the thing is, it's about a 2-year lead. So we train the institution now. It has about 18 months to prepare its self-study. Then you have the off-site review, then the on-site review. So we're looking at 2 to 2.5 years before and we'll start with 3 single institutions. Then we're going to move to a cluster of institutions that are part of a district and see how this new approach deploys with them. So overall, it's going to be a 3 to 5 year project.
So I would hope that you share the insights of the pilot with the system. It would be very, very helpful. I know as a trustee of a large community college district, we have 4 colleges, and each of those reports, depending on the size of the school, of the college, had a different size report, and this part about taking the fear out of the process is really critical. The report itself could easily be 100 pages, but the documentation about everything that you had to say in that report required 300 pages, and that's the part that I'm glad to see is changing as well. The other is what Member Fawn said with regard to the standards and with regard to the system is embarking on a number of initiatives that are very student-centered, and I do not want us to move back to a place where we have to fear making changes and fear the ACCJC in terms of sanctions. But we really do have to have a clear idea of what it is we're doing, how it is we're doing it, and then help on improving our systems, improving our programs in service to the students. So that's where I think we ultimately need to go, and you will be very helpful in that process.
So one of the philosophical pieces that we speak to very often is there is no enduring change without education. And the way that plays out for us is constantly communicating what's the core genius behind these standards, and what does it look like when your institution gets excited about that and embraces it. Then continuous quality improvement is embedded right into the DNA of the organization, and you're not waiting for this volcanic effect every 7 years when the police arrive looking for scorpions under the rocks. So it's a philosophical shift that we think is going to play out very effectively.
And the current standards, back to your question, do not do a very good job of identifying what's a really important priority and what's a technical detail. I mean, some of us rather meanly describe it as the 128 checkbox process. So I think the philosophical hope on the changes is we get something that's more thoughtful and really makes it apparent what's important for student success.
Chancellor has a remark.
Thank you. I don't want to belabor any of the points that have been made, but just I have just a few comments, some thank yous, and then a question as we wrap up. First, I also want to echo the thanks to you, Richard, and your team. Certainly, one of the first things I had to begin to do when I was fortunate enough to be selected as chancellor is begin making phone calls with then Chair-elect Rodriguez and others on the commission to find a way to diffuse the frustration and anger that was occurring. And so I think given the fact that you are here giving this report and we don't have a room full of people who are upset says a lot about how far we've come. Either that or that, we've done such a good job of taking all the anger and shifting it to us. And we've shifted it off you. So either way, we're thankful for the work that you've done. And certainly I want to echo Ian's comments about the individuals who were very involved in making this change. Certainly Eric Skinner. I can't help but highlight Jake Knapp's participation, our former general counsel, acting general counsel, who was very much involved in trying to settle some of the legal issues surrounding this crisis. Certainly Brian King, who chaired the CEO group, did a fantastic job of helping to mediate the concerns, and certainly former Chair Raul Rodriguez, who I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have many conversations with, and thanks to the leadership of the board, the commission board, we came a long way. So thank you. I do want to echo a couple of concerns that you've heard. Certainly with regard to fiscal monitoring, we are seeing signs of distress in the field. We want to make sure that all of us are working together to proactively reach out to colleges, districts, make sure that we're providing the support necessary, but also ensuring that our colleges deal with their fiscal situations. It is very hard for a college to admit that they're having a fiscal crisis until they're deep in crisis. So we hope to work with you. I know we've had conversations over the years about how we do fiscal monitoring, and so that is certainly an area that we are going to spend much more time on, finding ways to all work together to ensure the fiscal health of our colleges, because that certainly impacts student success. Second thing is, you've heard the concerns about the sanctions. Not that I am an advocate for more sanctions, but I am an advocate in ensuring that we do everything possible to ensure that our colleges are supporting the needs of our students, particularly in terms of the outcomes that our students expect when they go to college. And so I hope that we can continue to work together with all the activity we have in the Chancellor's Office to focus on student success, particularly as it relates to equity gaps. If there are ways that we can work together to ensure that our colleges are doing everything possible to close those equity gaps and ensure that all of our students are achieving success. And then my final question to you is, have you had the opportunity to survey the field to see how they are responding to the changes that you're making? And if so, what's been the reaction?
So the group that was referred to earlier as Work Group 1 that was talking about improving relationships with the Chancellor's Office in the field, many of its members have now agreed to kind of reinvent themselves as our advisory group. Kindred Murillo is taking lead on that. She has crafted a fairly extensive set of survey questions that I believe will go out to the field early next year. And it will be one of several ongoing processes by which we engage in some kind of objective survey and see how things are going. And we'll use that as a benchmark and see if trend data would indicate over time as we repeat the same survey, if there are areas that continue to need our careful attention. Good question.
So let me just take the privilege of summing up here. I first started on the board at the time the whole CCSF and ACCJC thing exploded, and it was pretty awful. I also, I'm really appreciative of what you've done to kind of lower the temperature and correct some of the obvious and egregious miscalculations of your predecessors. I also want to thank some other people. I think Chancellor Bryce Harris, when he was here, did a nice job of kind of pulling together the strategy of getting the CEOs to form two groups, one for the current crisis, one for the future, and I think that worked out really well, and I think he deserves some credit. All the CEOs who took a lot of time to participate on those two committees also deserve a lot of credit. Finally, though, virtually everything else I would have said has been said, but I concur in what the Chancellor and others have said here today about to not lose the vigilance. I think you started out by talking about how a lot of self-reported data was being accepted. I mean, it may be that every now and then you need to do a kind of a random check like they do at TSA and just make sure that everything that you're being told is completely accurate, so that something doesn't slip through. But I certainly wish you the best. I think it's an amazing turnaround given where we were. For those of you who weren't here a few years ago, it was the most contentious time we've had here for sure, and people were coming up here and insulting the Chancellor, and they were pretty close to dumping the ACCJC altogether, and so I think it really looks great the way it's worked out, and I wish you the best of luck. Okay, next up, item 4.6, monitoring the fiscal condition of CC districts. Sounds like the perfect follow-up. Vice Chancellor Osmena.
Yes, as Vice Chancellor Osmena comes up, it is a good segue given the issues and concerns that were raised, and certainly Board Member Costa gave a nice preview to the introduction of FICMAC, which is coming up next. So with that, we'll turn it over to Vice Chancellor Osmena.
Great, thank you. And yes, these are very similar issues to the issues described, and we'll talk a bit about our relationship with ACCJC, and we will we'll explain what FICMAT, that great acronym, is. So three just goals for today: to talk a bit about the statutory and regulatory framework. I think a point that I would want to emphasize, we mentioned several times at yesterday's meeting the areas where the board had pretty broad authority and could exercise strong authority if it chose to do so. I would say this is another area where the statute gives the board pretty significant authority to think about how you monitor, how you intervene, and how you support community college districts. We'll talk about our cycle of reporting and action, and then the system of support, the other entities that are doing similar work. So just to start, there's, two pieces of essentially intent that I think, the board should be mindful of. First is that, the board is directed in statute to maintain to the maximum degree possible local authority in the administration of districts. At the same time, it gives, it specifies intent that the board create a comprehensive community college accountability system that focuses not only on educational accountability, but also fiscal accountability. And the mechanism it imagines is that we're providing information that helps constituencies identify fiscal and educational strengths and weaknesses and take action locally. And so there are a set of responsibilities that community college districts have to adhere to. One is that they're required to provide for annual audits. They use audit procedures that are specified by the Chancellor's office, and they engage with external auditors to do those audits. And then they have to report information to the Board of Governors regarding the fiscal condition of the district. We saw those regulations yesterday. They essentially submit quarterly reports on their fiscal and budgetary conditions, including their outstanding obligations, their fund balances, expenditures, and revenues. Those reports have to be reviewed at public meetings locally, and then they submit the report to the Chancellor's office no later than 45 days after the quarter ends. And then there's a lot of regulations that you have adopted that create a whole set of processes and standards and criteria around fiscal health and accountability. Existing law requires you to do so, and what you've done is develop standards for sound fiscal conditions that are referenced throughout. There's a set of standards in existing regulations about what a district who is complying with sound fiscal conditions looks like, with the expectation that we would be doing management reviews of districts that are experiencing difficulties or not demonstrating those conditions. We can develop actions for districts that fail to achieve stability or fail to comply with regulations or recommendations that you've implemented. And then there's a possible appointment of a special trustee, and I would say this is a heavy action, that a special trustee, and given your authority, could take over many of what we would consider local management activities. And then the board has a responsibility to report regularly to the legislature and to the governor. With regard specifically to the quarterly reports, the board's regulations direct the chancellor to determine if intervention's needed. And I would say this is to emphasize kind of the goals of this process. The primary goal in the existing laws is essentially to prevent the need for an emergency apportionment. Obviously, in the work that the board does, I think there are broader goals about making sure that community college districts are in have such a financial condition that they're able to carry out educational programs in a way that meets the vision for success. I think that is the goal that we're aspiring to as we think about the work in this area. But the clear goal in this statute is that we are trying to avoid the need for apportionments outside of our existing general apportionment system. The measure that we look at largely is whether the district would need, if current trends persist, an emergency apportionment within 3 years. The second criteria that we're looking at when we review the quarterly reports is whether the district is in compliance with those sound management principles. And again, the statutes and regulations specify a set of ways in which we can intervene. We can require additional reports. We can direct the district to respond to those specific concerns, direct them to adopt a plan and we would monitor the implementation of that plan. And again, in certain cases, we would assign a special trustee. And again, the statute repeats these, in many different contexts, repeats these obligations of the chancellor to conduct management reviews, to direct districts to amend plans, and to appoint special trustees. So what this slide graphic shows is the ways in which we are planning to renew our emphasis and formalize a system of monitoring and review of community college districts. This work is not new to the system, but in recent years has become more informal, given what Chancellor Oakley described as some evidence that we ought to be concerned about the fiscal health of many community college districts. Our office has recently tried to reformalize some of the work that we're doing. And so this is the timeline for this year that we are proposing to take on. And I would say this presentation to you today is likely the first in a series of presentations and an introduction to these issues, and that we would intend to provide you updates based on this calendar. And so by November 15th, our office is going to begin to produce an annual report based on the financial indicators that we see in those annual financial reports that districts submit to our office. I'll talk through a set of factors that we've considered in the past. We're still refining the way in which we would do those reports. In addition to the financial indicators, a set of indicators that we think are important are the set of audit indicators that largely come from the annual audits that districts do. The goal here is more to look at internal controls and to think about, is the district organized and complying with policies in such a way that gives us confidence that they have a stable fiscal condition. Based on when we receive those annual audits, we would expect to do that review by February 28th. And then we move into a set of more intensive intervention. And again, we'll talk through districts that we might think are at risk, and throughout the year following the receipt of the second quarter and third quarter financial reports, we would produce updates to better understand their fiscal condition. And so what we imagine doing here is to create a set of 3 categories. Low-risk districts that in a given fiscal year, based on the information we have, we would intend to take no further action. A set of moderate risk districts, which I think there would be several in that group, where we would continue to monitor their performance. Again, we'd look at their second and third quarter financial reports, and we'd also potentially might ask for additional information from the district, ask them to conduct a risk assessment, and potentially develop a plan for submittal to the Board of Governors. And then finally, we think that there may be a relatively small at this point number, but a not insignificant number of districts that may be higher risk. We would call them high risk that might need immediate attention and intensive monitoring. And I think that involves a deeper set of interventions, including by our office and visits by our office, but potentially resources from other entities, including the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, and potentially the appointment of a special trustee. I think one thing that we are sensitive about here and are still considering, in the past, our office has produced what I've understood to be called a watch list that I think has a whole set of implications locally. I think the goal is to have a set of reactions locally. That's as we talked about kind of the legislature's theory of action here, this is one primary role of our office is to make transparent to local communities what the fiscal condition of their community college district is. But I think we need to better understand what that, how that plays out and what we should be doing with our assessments. We have guidance that we issued in 2005, so quite a bit of time ago, that specifies the criteria that we ought to be looking at when we're doing our fiscal health assessments. The primary criteria is the district's unrestricted general fund balance. These are the resources that they have available to them if they hit a fiscal crisis. But that we would also be looking at other criteria, revenues and expenditures, and essentially deficit spending, what the full-time equivalent enrollment is, which for many years and still is even under our new funding formula, a primary driver of a community college's revenues in a given year. Changes in salaries and benefits compared to those revenues, essentially looking at whether the costs of salaries and benefits are increasing at a higher rate than the district's revenues, and then audit findings, again, to give us some sense of the internal controls. I've provided on these slides, the next 2 slides, just some sense of where we are today. This is 16-17 data. We're still waiting on a few districts to certify their 17-18 data. But essentially what you see here, this is a histogram that shows in each of the bins the unrestricted general fund reserves across districts. So the height of the bar is how many districts are in that category. What you see here is that most districts have general fund reserves under 20%. And so the standard that we've set in that 2005 policy is a 5% reserve. I think if you talk to the chief business officer community, they see that as a relatively low bar. I think others we talk to see that as a very low bar. I think we need to be cognizant about kind of what this balance is between districts, spending the resources they receive in a given year versus, but also having reserves to get them through hard times. One of the second criteria we've used again is comparisons of revenues and expenditures. This histogram shows surpluses and deficits as a percentage of total revenues across districts. And again, what you'll see is that most districts are running modest surpluses in the range of 0 to 6% of their revenues. And so I'll close by describing the network of support. Obviously we have a primary role for the Chancellor's office. I think Chancellor Oakley has we've talked about this as part of our budget. The team working on this is relatively small. And so I think we are reliant upon a variety of others to help support this work. For the past several years now, the Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative has been doing a lot of work with community college districts on a proactive basis. A key set of indicators and a key driver of, or a key impetus of IAPI's work was concerns about fiscal health of districts. And so there are indicators related to fiscal health in their work. And I think that would continue to be an important part of how we support districts on a proactive basis, address their issues. As was mentioned, our office has been working closely with the Accrediting Commission to begin to figure out how we align the efforts of our office with the Commission's work. I think one thing that's clear to us is that we want to avoid situations where our office and the Commission assess districts and colleges differently, where we say someone is healthy when the Commission says they're not, or vice versa. I think a key distinction that we make in our work is that we're looking at community college districts. The accreditor looks at institutions, but I think in general we're working to make sure we're looking at similar issues. And then the last part of this puzzle, which is certainly not comprehensive, but is the work of the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team. And Member Costa mentioned that Mike Fine, who is the CEO of the team, is here, and would love to invite him up to make any comments and to introduce the work that they do.
Thank you, Christian. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board, Chancellor Oakley. My pleasure to join you this morning. Let me give you some personal perspective. Was a very successful high school student many, many years ago, but graduated with absolutely no clue what to do with my life. And so I started at my local community college, Riverside City College, and spent 2 years there, and with just an outstanding faculty that took me under their wing and helped me identify the things that I may have an interest in pursuing. And in fact, I started with one idea and left with a completely different idea as I transferred on to higher ed. And I would tell you, in the many years that I've spent in school, undergraduate, graduate degrees, the best faculty I ever encountered on a one-to-one basis that I knew absolutely cared about me and my personal success and achievement were those folks at Riverside Community College. You spent some time today with Foundation. I can have served as treasurer of RCC's general obligation campaigns. I currently sit on their local foundation board, currently as chair of their finance committee. So the hope is that they stay very fiscally stable as a district. Otherwise, I will have to step aside in that volunteer role. But just to put some perspective around an affinity I have for the work that's done. And that, of course, was many years ago. And by staying engaged, even through my many years as a K-12 administrator and leader in partnership with the local community college, I have seen the work evolve, I think, as a system, as a focus of what we want to do. FCMAT, as Ms. Acosta, great explanation of us. We are the state's Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, known better by our initials, FCMAT. We are this unique organization out there in many respects. We are an independent external agency of the state. In the legislature's wisdom back in 1991 when we were formed, they really felt like this needed to be an independent body that not only reported in part to the legislature, but to the administration as well, and had the freedom to do the work that we were tasked with and kind of, if you will, speak the truth without any kind of constraints. And many years later, that work was broadened to include you as our community college partner, so really a K-14 spectrum of work. To create the independence, the state contracts with the Kern County Office of Education, Kern County Superintendent of Schools, to actually host us. Although the majority of my staff are scattered all over the state, very few are actually based in Kern. We do have a main office in Bakersfield, and I have an office here in Sacramento, along with quite a bit of staff that's based here in Sacramento, because we also, in another role, another hat, are a contractor to the Department of Education with respect to their data systems. And a conversation that you're all involved in, we actually operate for CDE, the CalPADS system that collects data on all K-12 students throughout the state. We are anxious to have a broader conversation about that and how that system can play a role in the broader picture of monitoring and our students and their success. It is true that the bulk of our work is in the K-12 spectrum, 1,100 school districts compared to 117 or so colleges, or roughly there, I guess, plus the online now. And so that's where we have a focus. The good news is about 70% of our work is really very, very positive. It's a district calling us and saying, we need some help in an area. And some of that work includes community colleges who call us as individual campuses. Some of that work includes the chancellor's office who calls us and says, will you go have a conversation with these folks and see where you might be able to help them. And we help them with a broad spectrum of operational issues. On the instructional side, we do a lot of work in special education in the K-12 space, but we certainly focus a lot on fiscal, budget, multi-year financial projections, operational kinds of things. How are they staffed? How are they spending their funds to support their primary mission of teaching and learning and student success? We do this work with partners. On the K-12 side of the house, our main partner are our county offices of ed, which serve in a role similar to the chancellor's office in that they have first responsibility for oversight in the K-12 spectrum. And we do that through a very structured set, much of what Christian just outlined you, but some 27, 28 years since AB 1200 was passed, that puts in place these regular reports that come to a county office. They have a set of standards and criteria that are statewide that they review those against. Individual districts actually self-certify their status. So the analogy here would be the slide you just had with regard to low, moderate, and high risk in the K-12 space. Districts self-certify, and the county's role is to concur or not concur with that. And if they concur, that's great. If they don't concur, then that creates a kind of a whole separate watch list, to use Christian's vocabulary there. But one of the things we monitor very closely is where are our K-12 partners and districts in that. Our other partners in this certainly include all the agencies you're very familiar with. We have a very close working relationship with the Department of Finance, with the California Department of Ed, with the Chancellor's Office, and both with the legislature and mainly through the Department of Finance with the administration. Regular, almost daily conversations with one or more of those agencies as we're working with a district. So I talked about that 70%. Another 10% of our work is the work we don't really like to get involved in, but it's allegations of fraud, misappropriation of public funds, other illegal activities. While most of that kind of activity is dealt with very locally as a personnel matter, we don't hear a lot about it, we don't read a lot about it, but in the K-12 space, if those allegations rise to the county superintendent level, then they have us as a resource. And the state funds that work that we do in that regard, so it saves them, in most cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars for an investigation, and it brings them subject matter expertise. All of my staff have school business or college business office experiences. The other piece kind of that's left out there, another 10% is on professional development. We do that through a variety of means and with a variety of partners, both private and public agencies and businesses that we partner with, frankly, to leverage the resources that we're given through the state budget for professional development, but the focus is very much on the area of identifying risk, avoiding risk, financial risk, and crisis. And then the last roughly 10% of our work is really what we would describe as fiscal crisis. You know this from your own experience in Compton Community College. We partnered with you and spent 10 years there as the evaluator in Compton Community College, and I join you all in the previous presentation in applauding the work that's been done through the accreditation process, because we certainly were very familiar with that through the events in Compton and El Camino College stepping in as ultimately the umbrella agency. We've also worked with you carefully and closely with City College of San Francisco most recently, a variety of other districts that the Chancellor's Office has asked us to work within. We're working with one right now, or getting ready, mobilizing actually to go into one right now. Just as we do in the K-12 spectrum, we provide a number of tools that are available either with us doing the work or just download. They're available on our webpage for the college district to access. Specifically is fiscal health risk analysis. We have a brand new tool for the K-12. We have a pre-existing tool for the community colleges in this regard that we are committed to updating, just as we just did in the last 90 days on the K-12 side. Our next step is to do the community college one. These tools have existed for a long time. They're regularly used. But they are a yes and no survey, if you will, across 15 to 20 areas, high-risk areas. Christian identified some of those on the earlier slide with the focus on unrestricted general fund balance. They go on into staffing percentages, staffing levels, enrollment trends, all the indicators of risk. And so they can be used as a self-assessment tool, or they can be used as in conjunction with work that we would actually do. We also publish indicators of potential risk and insolvency for community colleges. They're all topics that you're familiar with. And by the way, all of these start with leadership and governance. And for those of you on governing boards, you know that very, very well. If we look at the districts that have had to have emergency appropriations in the last 30 years, we can track their problem directly back to a governance issue and a leadership issue. It manifested itself sometimes years, sometimes decades later, in a fiscal issue where they ran out of cash. And that's kind of the definition of insolvency in our business, right? Is they don't have sufficient cash to meet payroll, to pay our employees who do the work for us, right? The rest of the financial indicators ultimately are things we monitor, but they're not the definition. K-12, regular K-12, excluding charters and community colleges, don't really make use of U.S. bankruptcy protections, right? The state becomes their backstop, and we saw that in Compton. We've seen the Chancellor's Office step up as the backstop in City College, San Francisco, those kinds of things. And the same would be true on the K-12 side. And so our first and foremost task is to get in there where there's signs of fiscal distress and help pull them back off the edge, if you will. Help, have a new set of perspectives, a new set of eyes looking at things, pull them back and avoid that. And in fact, it is a very successful model and system. In 27 years, we've had 8 districts that have required an emergency appropriation. That's out of 1,100 K-12 and 100 plus community college districts. And so the system does work, and we work each day and each year through the Budget Act to refine that ever so slightly. So I will stop there as the introduction to FCMAT and be happy to answer any questions.
Great. I will just close out the presentation. I think one thing, again, to emphasize is that, especially compared to schools and the system in place for fiscal monitoring of school districts, there is significant discretion for this board to determine how we design that process. And so, I think the board in prior years has created policies around that. I think this is an opportunity to have that conversation again. There's a lot of drivers of, I think that should make us cautious about fiscal health of community college districts moving forward. I think you'll see slower. We've, the Legislative Analyst's Office released a report today that said general fund revenues and Proposition 98 revenues will continue to grow, but more modestly than they have in the past. Costs are increasing, including costs of pension benefits, health benefits, other costs that districts are facing. And then I think we are cautious here about making sure that we're providing adequate support as districts are implementing the new funding formula. So over the next few months, we will be receiving reports from community college districts. We'll be analyzing those reports, providing you updates, and then I think an important part is providing updates to the governor and to the legislature. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Let me just add a little last bit of flavor to Christian's presentation. The timing of this is not coincidental. We want to begin preparing for what we believe will be some distress signals in the field. We are seeing them already. You may have read about some in the paper. So we need to be prepared for that. These are unpleasant aspects of our role, but it is a very important aspect of our role. So we want to be as fair and as transparent as possible of how we're going to work with the districts to, at the end of the day, help them, help themselves, and help our students. There is a tremendous amount of pressure in the field. Notwithstanding the new funding formula, that has actually taken a little bit of the pressure off with the 3 years of hold harmless. But there is tremendous pressure on salary and benefits. Any intervention on behalf of the Chancellor's office immediately gets reactions from labor and collective bargaining, as well as from administrators who are trying to do what they feel they need to do to protect fiscal health of their district. So we are going to be in a no-win situation, but we have to keep the interests of our students and communities at the heart of what we do. We're not interested in refereeing collective bargaining arguments in the local level. We're just interested in making sure that the fiscal health of the districts is put front and center. The decisions that are made in collective bargaining are local issues. They will decide what is best for them locally. But as you can imagine, the cost of housing, the cost of living not only impacts our students, but impacts our faculty, impacts our classified staff, impacts our administrators, managers, and these are all pressures that are coming down on our local districts. So while we will continue to press for more base funding for our colleges and districts, these are pressures that are beginning to impact our districts.
Member Baum.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Chancellor, because this is an area of great concern to me as well, and I hope we do actually get updates that actually indicate by district where the warning signs are, because I've been concerned from reports from the field that say, oh, we're all in the same boat, we're all driving off a cliff, so we don't need to make the tough decisions locally, we'll just kick it up to Sacramento, and that's not an acceptable posture at a local district. I don't say that's universal, but I've heard that from the field, and so I'm concerned about that. And so I'm eager to know, even if you can even postulate right now at this moment in time, how many of our 72 or 73 districts now fall into the low risk category, and then how many are either moderate or high risk?
I would go back to that slide I have on primary criteria. I think, as we've described, an unrestricted general fund balance is a pretty fundamental one. So I think districts that are, in that first column, the dozen or so districts that are, between 5 and 13%, I think that's going to be a primary way in which we begin to classify districts. Districts on this next slide that are deficit spending, I think that's, again, a dozen or so districts there. I think that's going to be a set of districts that, especially if they have low reserves and are beginning to and are continuing deficit spending, that's something that we are mindful of. Again, those show that category of financial indicators. The other set of indicators that we'll be looking at are the audit indicators, which are indicative of internal control. And so I think districts where we see concerns on these, overlap on these two primary indicators, and then we also see audit findings that are concerning, I think are the places where we'll be focusing our attention.
And by the way, I think, just to be clear, I do not in any way, shape, or form believe that a 5% reserve at a district is in any way healthy. So we are going to be working with our CBOs to sort of help redefine what healthy means. There is certainly a concern that we will hear from labor organizations that too high a reserve is also not good, and we will certainly try to, as best we can, navigate those waters. But 5% is certainly, we do not see that is sustainable over time.
Just as a reference point, the national standard is 17%. That's Government Finance Officers Association. Now that covers lots of government entities. So you have to personalize that a tad, number one, to California, number two, to the environment, funding environment, and the nature of the operations of a community college. But just so you know, that is the national standard. In the K-12 world, the bulk of districts are at state minimum is 3%, which covers about a week and a half of activity, of payroll activity, about a week and a half.
Member Avalos.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you for the presentation. I think this is really helpful. I mean, I think for being on this board for over 4 years, I think this is the first time we discussed this. So I'm a little surprised we're talking about it now because we haven't talked about it before. That's my first point. Secondly, we all know that, and we're hearing that, give it 18 months, give it 24 months, we're looking for a downturn. So one of the things I'd appreciate to see is, on your histogram here, you need to project. If it's a funding level cut of 10%, 20%, where would that put the districts in the histogram? Because ultimately, yes, we're highlighting 12 districts in the secondary criteria, but could it be 20? And so to me, I think that's one of the things that we have to get ahead of, and it's something that we have to communicate to these folks that you need to think about the future, because the past is not an indication of the future.
If I can add to that, Member Avalos, I think we are in a much better position today than we were post-recession, 2006, 7, 8, in large part because of the work of Member Costa and her team. We have a much healthier reserve in the state. We have paid down debt. So those are all good things in our favor because that was a big driver of the crisis during the recession. The amount of money that the state had to borrow from community colleges to make its own payroll, per se. But a big driver of the challenge is enrollment decline. The recession impacts lag about 2 years, but enrollment decline hits our colleges immediately. And so while we are fortunate that we have a 3-year hold harmless, the new funding formula de-emphasizes enrollment as a primary driver of revenue, that is still going to be a big driver of the challenges that colleges are facing right now, because we have a statewide enrollment decline in K-12, which will have a direct impact on enrollment in community colleges.
I would just add also one of the things we've asked the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team to help us with is developing out tools for multi-year budgeting. So I think, ideally this is a partnership between our office and the district, and that we are working with districts, providing them with the support they need to make these projections, and then specifying some standards about how we might look at them.
Member Costa.
I just want to commend the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor Osmeña for this presentation. I think it's critically important. I would offer just a couple of comments. I've been involved in various roles in both community colleges in fiscal distress as well as K-12. And AB 1200, which was passed in the early 1990s, came out of the Richmond Unified School District's second bankruptcy. They're now known as West Contra Costa County. The idea was an early warning system, and I would submit it's time to relook at that philosophical underpinning. My experience is that most of these districts, when there is a change in leadership, that's when you realize that there's fiscal distress. It's when the superintendent or the president leaves, and then it is really an onion, and you realize that not only is there not enough money, they've misappropriated bond funds, and it really becomes quite the quagmire. And so as we look at this, I think your point, Mike, about governance is one that I'm particularly keen on. This is where our local boards need to understand their fiduciary responsibility and how to build a budget. And I think that we have many well-meaning public servants who don't necessarily understand that aspect of the work. And so I don't really know if looking at, I agree 5% is too low. I also don't know that that gives you enough of a warning system. I think history has indicated that it really doesn't. And so I would submit we probably need to look at other indicators going forward.
Member Anderson.
I want to thank you also. I want to give a personal anecdote because I joined the board, and almost 3 months after I joined the board, on the front page of the local newspaper that I own was a story about Santa Rosa Junior College being $6 million short. I called the chancellor and talked to the chancellor about it, but I think that to go to Member Costa's point, we have to come up with a system that also integrates the public, because I can tell you our community was totally unaware of what was happening at the local level for some of the same reasons that Member Costa brought up. I don't think that, people get protected, they get insulated, they don't want to go ahead and be the bearer of bad news. But I think we need to create a standard where you do go on the list and local communities are aware that there's a problem pending. So that they, at the local level, as community leaders, are asking those important questions. So, Christian, can you bring that up? Do we have anything like that, when they do, you have these low, medium, and high risk? Is this an internal document, or do we go ahead, if you go on, start down a path, do we notify the local media to say, Santa Rosa JC has now gone on the list?
So we, in the, I guess, not so distant past, we had a public list, which, I think, when folks have talked to me about it, they've called it a watch list. I think our office informally called it the watch list. We stopped producing that list. I think part of our, rejuvenation of this process is going to be some public list that we make available about the fiscal condition of districts. I think the questions, and Chancellor Oakley probably can speak to this more. I think we've been having discussions about what are those different steps we take. I think an initial step is hopefully, for a variety of reasons, I think it's important for us to give the boards and the presidents or the chancellors, some notification of what we're going to do. But I think a big part of how we see our role is empowering communities and is giving information to community members to be able to hold districts accountable and to be able to intervene in their own districts.
Well, with the presentation that Mike made, I think that there's real value there. My concern is that you're going out and you're debt financing, and if you as a voter in the local area are not aware that you're on a watch list, you finance it, and in essence, you're exacerbating the problem by putting more debt on, the local entity.
Yeah, I will, Member Anderson, I will again give you a K-12 example, because it's for 20 plus years we've been doing this.